Chapter 90. At this point, Chen Wenkai had to agree even if he did not want to. Originally, he just wanted to expose Yang Chen's fraud and then force Chunyang Palace to take action to clean up the sect. Now that Su Qingxin had made the big oath of the Heart Demon, it was not just his own business. Although Chunyang Palace was a second-rate sect, it could not tolerate people slandering it. If there was any doubt, they had to show evidence. Without evidence, even the head of Taishanmen could not slander Chunyang Palace at will. If the head of Taishanmen really came forward, maybe he could really kill Yang Chen. Unfortunately, a small heaven stairway gathering, a disciple at the second level of qi refining, wanted the head of Taishanmen to come forward. Cheng Wenkai estimated that he had never dreamed of this. Cheng Wensai's weight was obviously not enough to make Chunyang Palace, which had several nascent soul masters in charge, bow down. The only thing he could do now was to prove that Yang Chen cheated. Otherwise, he would have to bear the reputation of speaking without thinking. In addition to apologizing to Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen, he was afraid that no one would take his words seriously in the future as a Jindan Grandmaster. A Jindan who argued with a disciple at the second level of qi refining, how many people could look up to him? Cheng Wenkai somewhat regretted that he had listened to Li Qingxin's words and concluded that Yang Chen cheated without saying anything. In addition, he also somewhat hated the 9 Jindan masters. They should have known whether there was any fraud or not, but they made an ambiguous gesture, which made him make a wrong judgment. At this point, it was hard to get off. He could only bite the bullet and gather the Jindan to launch the Heaven Stairway array again. Su Qingxin went directly to Yang Chen. Yang Chen had just come down from the top of the Heaven Stairway and was discussing with Gong Sunling about the illusion that Gong Sunling encountered in the Heaven Stairway. When he heard Su Qingxin's words, he immediately laughed. "Is there such a good thing?" Yang Chen almost asked in surprise. He climbed the stairway to heaven. Not only did he become more determined, but he also broke through to the third layer of qi training. Ascending the stairway to heaven again would mean that his spiritual power would increase greatly, and he might even be able to fuse with more of the immortal slaying platform's will. If it wasn't for the fact that only one disciple was allowed to climb the stairway under the management of many sects, Yang Chen would have begged others to climb it a few more times. Now that a great opportunity had fallen directly onto Yang Chen's head, Yang Chen was naturally overjoyed. At this time, Su Qingxin seemed to notice the changes in Yang Chen's body. He exclaimed in surprise, "You have a breakthrough?" Then his face changed. "How can you have all 5 elements of spiritual power? Isn't this putting the cart before the horse?" Gong Sunling had also questioned this question before. However, at that time, she saw that Yang Chen had made progress, so she didn't think too much about it. At this moment, when Su Qingxin asked the same question, Gong Sunling also said with concern, "Junior brother Yang, you must not go astray." No matter what, their tone and demeanor, no matter what, they were concerned about Yang Chen. Yang Chen, of course, knew what was good for him, so he didn't hide it. He answered Su Qingxin, "Grandmaster, disciple just wants to know what the other 5 elements of spiritual power are like. Focus on cultivating your fire spiritual power. What about the other spiritual power? What can you do?" Su Qingxin said with a look of exasperation. It wasn't easy to climb to the top of the stairway to heaven. With such talent, it would be a pity if it was ruined because of biting off more than he could chew. Yang Chen didn't answer and directly spoke with the facts. He stretched out his hands, one hand high and one hand low, in front of him. Then, a red wave of water gushed down from the higher hand, like a waterfall, and fell to the lower hand. This waterfall was like a real waterfall that had been miniaturized 100 times. The turbid waves tumbled and rushed straight down. Even the splashes were not a drop. It was so real. But in the eyes of Su Qingxin and Gong Sunling, they directly froze in place, dumbfounded and tongue-tied. What fell in Yang Chen's hands was obviously water, but the color and temperature told them that the waterfall they saw was completely fire. Controlling fire like water, this realm of playing with fire was simply unbelievable to Su Qingxin, let alone Gong Sunling. The expressions of the two people were almost the same. They didn't say a word for a long time. They stared at the tumbling waterfall in Yang Chen's hands, and then watched the waterfall turn into an orange-red desert. Huge sand dunes, small grains of sand moved with the wind, the desert was desolate, and even the heat of the fire itself gave them a real desert feeling. Then, Xianxia turned his hands over, and all the scenery disappeared without a trace. In the ears of the two people, Xianxia's voice sounded, "Sorry, I can only do this now. I can't simulate the wood and metal attributes for the time being." With the great improvement of his spiritual awareness, in fact, Xianxia could already simulate the metal and wood attributes, but Xianxia hid it, not because he was afraid that the two people in front of him would harm him, but because he didn't want people to know too many of his secrets. Connecting the two scenes, controlling fire like water, controlling fire like earth, Xianxian was a knowledgeable person and naturally saw the extent of Xianxia's control of the fire. Xianxian finally began to praise. "No wonder Zhu Chintao also praised you to me, saying that your fire controlling technique is unprecedented. I thought he was cultivating the younger generation, but I didn't expect that this guy was still modest." As for Gong Sunling, she was even more beautiful, and the surprise on her face couldn't be concealed. Looking at Xianxia, her eyes seemed to have another taste. Now there was no need for Xianxia to say more. The two people also knew what Xianxia wanted to do by cultivating other spiritual powers. Xianxian just patted Xianxia's shoulder with approval, and then encouraged. "It seems that the younger generation is really formidable. However, remember, other spiritual powers are only a reference. You must not invest too deeply and neglect the essentials. With your current ability to control fire, after you build the foundation, you will definitely be the first in controlling fire under the Yuanying stage. Do your best." "Thank you, Grandmaster, for your encouragement." Xianxia bowed slightly and thanked him. This was a priceless advice. Although it was not suitable for him, he still had to thank him for this intention. "Xianxia, do you have the confidence to go to the Heaven's Ladder again?" Xianxian asked again to confirm. If Xianxia was not sure, he would be in a difficult situation. "No problem." Xianxia nodded very affirmatively. This kind of good thing, he couldn't wait to come a few more times. However, Xianxia also knew that it was impossible, so he asked hesitantly, But what?" Xianxian interjected and asked. "Grandmaster, in the end, the Heaven's Ladder is an illusory array. If the illusory array is broken, it will definitely backfire on the person who presides over the array." Xianxia asked with some worry, "If there is something wrong with the 10 Jedon stage masters, I am afraid this disciple can't afford it." The backfire of the illusory array also depended on the power. The more powerful the illusory array, the more powerful the backfire. Xianxia must say it in advance. Otherwise, when the time comes to pursue it, Xianxia will be annoyed. "Ha!" Xianxian was very happy with Xianxia's words. "Well, I will go and ask them. Don't hurt them when the time comes, and they will come to us." Chapter 91. Xianxian had already made the great oath of the heart demon. How could he let Cheng Wenkai, who forced him to swear, give up halfway? Therefore, the matter of whether Xianxia cheated or not began to spread. But in any case, Cheng Wenkai, the Taishanman, could not escape the name of jealousy. Otherwise, why was it that others did not question Xianxia's cheating, but he did? Moreover, he did not question those who climbed to the top of the heaven stage, but he questioned Xianxia who reached the top. No matter whether Xianxia's climb to the top was cheating or not, Cheng Wenkai must have verified it out of jealousy. The Taishanman, a Jedon stage master, and the face of the entire Chunyang Palace, everyone was very clear. At this time, Cheng Wenkai was not allowed to retreat. However, when Xianxian repeated the words that Xianxia had said, the 9 fellow Daoists from various sects that Cheng Wenkai had found also began to hesitate. Chunyang Palace asked Xianxia to climb the heaven stairway again. They must be confident, so it meant that the formation that presided over the heaven stairway would definitely be broken, and for these people, it meant that they would definitely suffer a backlash. Previously, Xianxia had already made 9 Jedon stage masters fall. Everyone was a discerning person. Who didn't know that the person who made the most effort in the illusion formation would suffer a greater backlash? At most, Xianxian did not make too much effort, but he had already made the great oath of the devil and said that there was no cheating. Others ended up like that, so these people had to think about it. 2 Jidan stage masters quit on the spot. Cheng Wenkai, who fell into this situation, had to find 2 Jidan stage masters from Taishanmen and promised many benefits and compensation, so that the others could rest assured and prepare to let Yangchen climb the heaven stairway again. Because Yangchen reached the top, 10 Jidan stage masters were injured, and the original gathering was interrupted. These newly added Jidan stage masters had to first let those who did not go up the heaven stairway go up one by one. It was considered as the end of this year's gathering, and at the same time, it was also to let the 10 Jidan stage masters familiarize themselves with the formation of the heaven stairway. This process lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Only then did all the disciples who were supposed to ascend the stairway to heaven finish. Next, it was Yangchen's second time climbing the heavenly stairway. To be on the safe side, this time, Cheng Wenkai even found a disciple who was at the same level as Yangchen, who was at the second layer of the Qi training tier. He climbed the stairway before Yangchen. He wanted to see if the effect of the stairway to heaven would be weaker against disciples of lower levels. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the Taishanmen disciple, who was in the second layer of the Qi refining realm, climbed up the first step of the heaven staircase. His body shook violently, and he barely managed to take the second step. His figure instantly disappeared, pushed out by the heaven staircase. And this was only the result of the Jindan who presided over the array just maintaining the operation of the array and not exerting too much influence. Then, Yangchen appeared at the bottom of the stairway, waiting for Cheng Wenkai and the others to get ready. The surroundings of the heaven stairway were once again filled with spectators. There were even more people than the last time. The number of people who came after hearing the news had at least doubled. The true control of the heaven stairway array, these Jindan grandmasters had already discovered that it was almost impossible to cheat on the heaven stairway. They could increase the difficulty of the heaven stairway, but they could not easily let people pass. At the beginning, Cheng Wenkai swore to accuse Yangchen of cheating, which was simply ridiculous. But now that things had come to this, no one could retreat, especially Cheng Wenkai. He could only choose to use any means necessary to keep Yangchen on the heaven stairway. He must not let him easily reach the top. As long as Yangchen could not reach the top this time, he would have an excuse, and everything would be fine. If Yangchen reached the top again, Cheng Wenkai could almost say that he could only mingle in the inner circle of the Taishanmen in the future. Also from the Taishanmen, the other 2 Jidan grandmasters who came to support would naturally support Cheng Wenkai. As for the remaining 7, Cheng Wenkai had already secretly promised them benefits, as long as they cooperated to increase the difficulty of the heaven stairway array. Now it was no longer a test of whether Yangchen cheated or not, but a pure effort for his own face. As soon as Yangchen stepped on the first step of the heaven stairway, the scenery in front of him immediately changed, and he was directly in a maze array. The maze array was different from the illusion array. It could make people unable to find the direction after turning around. The person who set up the array was also extremely clever. A Jidan grandmaster used a maze array to deal with Yangchen at the first level, which was already a great honor. Unfortunately, everyone, including Cheng Wenkai, made the same mistake as last time. That was, the first impression was the strongest, thinking that their own method could restrain Yangchen in the array. Perhaps if it was someone else, this maze array would be enough to make them crazy, but for Yangchen, not to mention a Jidan grandmaster, even an ascended master would not be able to play a maze array in front of him, a almighty immortal. Easily, Yangchen did not even stop and directly walked out along the correct route of the maze array. Next, it turned into a killing array. All the arrays could be set up by these Jidan grandmasters themselves. As long as they moved their minds, they could set up the array inside the heaven stairway and trap Yangchen. The only consequence of Yangchen not being able to break the array or being killed by the array was that he would be immediately pushed out of the heaven stairway. After all, this was only set up on the basis of the heaven stairway illusory array. However, it was also because of this that Yangchen could face it more easily. Any array that was set up on the basis of the illusion array, its essence was still an illusion array, this could not be changed. No matter what array they set up, it could not escape Yang Chen's eyes. The simplest way was for Yang Chen to ignore the illusion and forcibly walk out of the array. This was the fastest way and both sides were the safest. But Yang Chen obviously did not want Cheng Wenkai and others to be able to retreat so easily. Yang Chen chose to use the most complicated method to break the array, that was, to use his own cultivation to forcibly break the array. The 10 Jidong Grandmasters soon discovered that no matter how they set it up, Yang Chen could always use the most powerful method to break the array and rush out. The killing array that they carefully set up, not to mention hurting Yang Chen, could not even stop his figure. Fortunately, the array that was set up by a single person was only broken with a small spiritual power shock, and it had almost no effect on the Jedon Grandmasters. The array that they set up was so easily broken, even the clay bodhisattva was a little more angry. However, no matter how the 10 Jedon Grandmasters took turns to take out their own proud works, they could not make Yang Chen stop. Yang Chen was very happy at the moment. Cheng Wenkai and others actually set up the 5 elements array to deal with him. Whether it was a single attribute or a double attribute, or even all 5 elements, yin and yang, for Yang Chen, the 5 elements array was simply a tonic given to him. Under the targeted operation of the yin-yang 5 elements secret art, no matter what array it was, he could easily crack it. Perhaps outside, Yang Chen would be injured or even die because of the lack of spiritual power, but in the illusion, there was no need to worry about such injuries. After the 10 Jedon Grandmasters took turns several times, Yang Chen not only did not stop, but also climbed to the 30th floor of the heaven stairway. Chapter 92. They couldn't let Yang Chen slap their faces so blatantly. The 10 Jedon stage masters, headed by Cheng Wenkai, finally began to join forces. The formation of 10 people was naturally extraordinary, and Yang Chen's speed suddenly slowed down. The pressure doubled and Yang Chen immediately felt the abnormality. The 10 people joined hands to display the formation, which was different from the separate arrangement. Relying on the yin-yang 5 elements secret art alone could not solve it. In the face of this situation, Yang Chen chose another method that was to break the formation with the formation. The other party set up a formation, and Yang Chen also set up his own formation, to see who could break the other's formation. Under the equal strength of the formation, Yang Chen would not directly feel the suppression of the spiritual power and spiritual awareness, but it was much easier. In the illusion, Yang Chen's formation also needed to be imagined. However, Yang Chen was one person. When he started to break the formation, one of the 10 Jidon stage masters was also trapped by Yang Chen's formation. The two sides saw who could break the other's formation first. Cheng Wenkai and the other 9 Jidon stage masters were doomed to tragedy. Although Yang Chen was not an array cultivator in his previous life, he was also a great principal golden immortal. After ascending to the spiritual world and the immortal world, he learned a lot of powerful formations. Any one of them could not be recognized by the knowledge of a mere Jindan stage grandmaster. Even if he had never seen it, let alone breaking the formation in a short time. But Yang Chen was different. When he didn't have to face the pressure of 10 Jidon stage masters at the same time, breaking the formation was really a piece of cake for him. Every time he walked out of the broken formation, the other party was still in his formation, unable to find a way out. After breaking the formation, Yang Chen immediately felt the familiar taste of spiritual power entering the body. The other party's 10 Jidon stage masters joined forces to set up the formation. The spiritual power released by them was all transferred to Yang Chen's body because he broke the formation. The control center of the heaven stairway, the Jidon stage master who had just been trapped by Yang Chen's formation, spat out a mouthful of blood. Since the formation was forced, he immediately suffered a backlash. The power of 10 Jidon stage masters was enough to hurt him. But Yang Chen was still going up, and the heaven stairway formation could only continue. So, the second Jidon stage master was involved in Yang Chen's formation. Next, Yang Chen broke the formation and absorbed the spiritual power, and the second Jidon stage master vomited blood and was injured. The onlookers around the heaven ladder naturally couldn't see what was happening in the center, but Cheng Wenkai was very clear. watching the 10 Jidan masters vomit blood one after another, but they couldn't stop. He finally tasted the pain of the previous 9 Jidan masters. Unfortunately, Xianxian was only at the 30th level of the heaven stage. There were still more than 60 levels to reach the top. If someone was watching from the center, they would definitely find an interesting phenomenon. Every time Xianxian stepped on the heaven stairway outside, there would be a person vomiting blood in the center, one after another, which was very beautiful. When Xianxian stepped on the 60th heaven stairway, the 10 Jidan stage masters had each vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood. Their internal organs were injured, but they could only rely on elixirs to support themselves and could not stop. Once the heaven stairway formation was activated, unless the person in the formation withdrew or broke the formation, it could not be stopped. The 10 Jidan stage masters struggled and complained in their hearts. From beginning to end, Xianxian only used one formation and rotated it 3 times, but none of the Jidan stage masters could always see the clues. Sadly, from the beginning, the 10 Jidan stage masters had used 60 different formations, but none of them could stop Xianxian. And Xianxian only used a strange formation to make them fail 30 times. The 10 Jidan stage masters didn't know how many times they scolded Xianxian in their hearts. Use the magic weapon. Cheng Wuxia's mind moved, and his divine sense passed to the other 9 grandmasters. At the same time, his mind directly imagined a legendary magic weapon and blasted it towards Xianxian in the formation. Seeing a magic weapon flying in the sky, Xianxian immediately figured out the intention of Cheng Wuxia and the others. However, Cheng Wuxia had only heard of the magic weapon after all, and even his imagination was not comprehensive. If it was an ordinary qi refinement disciple, being bombarded by this magic weapon would directly knock him out of the heaven stairway. Unfortunately, the opponent was Xianxian, and when Xianxian was in the heavenly court, he had seen a real legendary magic weapon. Since it was just an imagination, who could have a more complete form and spirit than Xianxian's imagination? With a wave of his hand, a genuine magic weapon smashed the magic weapon that Cheng Wuxia imagined. Cheng Wuxia's divine sense was shaken, and it took him a while to recover. And while he was confused, Xianxian had already smashed the magic weapons released by the other 9 grandmasters in the illusion formation, and he himself had once again set foot on the 10th level of the heaven stage. The shock of his divine sense made Cheng Wuxia immediately realize his mistake. After all, the things he imagined were just imagination and were completely different from the magic weapons he cultivated. After realizing that Xianxian's imagination might be more powerful than his, he immediately informed the others to use their magic weapons to create illusions in the illusion formation. This time, Cheng Wuxia's gamble was right. He could freely control his magic weapon, and it was many times more powerful than the legendary items he imagined. Even because in the illusion formation, he could exert the strength of the nascent soul stage to stop Xianxian. Suddenly, the pressure doubled, and Xianxian's footsteps stopped directly. In the face of the magic weapon attack of 10 gold core masters, Xianxian had to do his best to release the dome of the medicine garden in the array. Xianxian's divine sense was now at the peak of the foundation stage. As long as he broke through one step, he could enter the level of the gold core stage. It was not a big problem to use the 7 steps enchanted killing array in the illusion formation. As soon as the array was out, the 10 gold core masters immediately felt that something was wrong. Their bodies had just moved, and 49 flying swords attacked fiercely. The powerful array that could even solve the nascent soul stage directly turned the 10 gold core masters into pieces. Of course, this was in the illusion. The 10 grandmasters, including Cheng Wuxia, directly spurted out blood from their mouths, and after several mouthfuls, they almost couldn't stop. At the same time, their own magic weapon and themselves were all smashed into pieces. At the same time, their divine sense was shaken, and they were in a trance. They could no longer support themselves and directly fainted. The array of the heaven stairway suddenly lost the control of the 10 gold core masters, but it did not stop, but continued to absorb their spiritual power, and according to the power of the illusion itself, it began to attack Xianxian. The remaining 20 levels of the heaven stairway were the most authentic heaven stairway. For Xianxian, this was no longer difficult. and soon he stood at the top of the heaven stairway again. Boom! The crowd was in an uproar again. Reaching the top twice, there was no need for people to say anything more. The right and wrong had their own hearts. And the surrounding audience also cheered because they could witness the miracle of reaching the top of the heaven stairway. Xianxian stood at the top of the heaven stairway and seemed to have some insight, and everyone was not surprised. But Cheng Wenkai, who presided over the array, did not react for so long, and someone immediately went to investigate. The scene in the control center made more than a dozen masters of various sects who arrived at the same time all shocked and opened their mouths wide. Chapter 93. In the center of the heaven stairway array, the figures of the 10 Jidon stage masters who entered could not be seen at all. There were only 10 white-haired old men with blood all over their chests. It was like a secret room that had been slaughtered. 10 people, all fainted on the ground, unconscious, and their breathing sounded extremely weak, as if they were about to die. Everyone was shocked and did not dare to neglect. They hurriedly carried out the 10 Jidon stage masters who had become like this. Then, the elixirs of their respective sects were stuffed into the mouths of the masters as if they were free. Immediately, someone began to inject spiritual power behind them to help these masters dissolve the medicine and at the same time replenish their body functions. Looking at this scene, Cheng Wenkai and the other 10 masters seemed to have fallen quite seriously. A few people who were helping them from behind had already noticed that the meridians of the injured in front of them were almost severed. All the spiritual power in their bodies had been drained, and even their life essence had been extracted. This was why they were aging so quickly. Even if they were cured, not to mention the Jidon stage, it was already a blessing to be able to maintain the level of the middle stage of the foundation stage. After a rush, the 10 dying Jidon stage masters were finally rescued. At this time, someone remembered to settle accounts with Xianxian on the top of the heaven stairway. All 10 Jidon stage masters were like this, and it was definitely related to Xianxian. Fellow Daoists, what's going on? Zhanxian stood directly in front of the 10 Jidon stage masters led by Cheng Wenkai and asked slowly in the same tone that Cheng Wenkai had when he first suspected Xianxian. Even if Zhanxian was not good, he was still a Jidon stage master. If many people wanted to touch Xianxian, they would have to go through Zhanxian in any case. However, Zhanxian did not give them a chance. Instead, he asked gloatingly, "Could it be that you have violated the commandment of the heaven stairway array?" Everyone was dumbfounded. Only then did they realize that there was indeed a strange rule after the heaven stairway's formation was discovered. It was said that the consequences of violating it were extremely serious. That commandment was that the Jidon realm master who presided over the formation was never allowed to take the initiative to use the formation of the heaven stairway to attack the people on the heaven stairway. Otherwise, not only would it cause a spiritual power backlash, but it was also very likely that the realm would fall, and even a serious loss of life. The appearance of these 10 Jidon stage masters in front of him, wasn't it the situation of their realm falling and losing their lifespan? You can't blame everyone. Even I, an old man who has been in charge of the heaven stairway for more than 10 years, just remembered that there is such a commandment in the heaven stairway. Zhanxian had indeed just thought of it. This also made him immediately understand why the 9 guys who were with him had their cultivation levels drop. So that was why. But the meaning shown in his tone made Cheng Wenkai and others want to cry but have no tears. In theory, this commandment is not hidden from anyone, so you should not forget it. It seems that it is not the disciples of my Chunyang Palace who are cheating, but a group of seniors who claim to be Jidon stage masters who presided over the formation violated the rules and jointly dealt with a disciple at the second level of the Qi refining stage. Zhanxian shook his head like a rattle, and his mouth made a sound. They are really promising. I have finally opened my eyes. I have seen shameless people, but I have never seen such shameless people. 10 Jidon stage masters, plus the 9 in front, 19 Jidon stage masters, jointly dealt with a disciple at the second level of the Qi refining stage of my Chunyang Palace. Your masters are really, really honored. Glorious. For a while, Zhanxian couldn't find any appropriate words. so he directly used such an inappropriate word. It was no wonder that Su Qingxin was so cynical. When Yang Chen reached the top for the first time, Su Qingxin was also affected at the same time and was recovering. He had just recovered some spiritual power when Cheng Wenkai and others had already arrived and began to question Yang Chen's fraud. At that time, the other party used this kind of sarcastic tone to bully Su Qingxin for not having evidence, forcing him to make the great oath of the Sky Demon, and even let Yang Chen go up the heaven stairway again to prove his innocence. Now that they finally found the truth of the matter and had the reason, how could they not return the insult they had suffered at that time? Cheng Wenkai and others were ashamed and resentful, and they almost spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Although there was this commandment, who took it seriously? If there were really 1 or 2 Jidan stage masters who secretly played a little trick, the tormented disciple would immediately be attacked and fall out of the heaven stairway, and the Jidan stage masters would be safe and sound. This kind of thing happened many times. Who would care about the commandment that almost never happened? But on Yang Chen's side, this time the commandment actually came true one after another. The first batch of 9 Jidan stage masters only fell a small realm, and they were seriously injured, but they still maintained the Jidan stage. But the second batch led by Cheng Wenkai suffered heavy losses. Not only were they seriously injured, but they also directly fell a realm, falling to the foundation stage, and they didn't know how much of their lifespan was lost. It was still uncertain whether they could return to the Jidan stage in their lifetime. This time, they really tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice. In order to embarrass a second-layer disciple, they paid the price of 10 Jidan stage masters. It was already the best ending to describe that the gains did not make up for the losses. In addition to these losses on the surface, the sects of the Jidan stage masters who participated in this matter would also suffer damage to their reputation. This was no longer something that could be made up for in a day and night. Even if these people returned to their sects, it was estimated that they would be severely punished by their sections. Among the 2 batches of Jidan stage masters who presided over the battle, only Su Qingxin strictly abided by the commandment, so he was spared. It was just a simple loss of spiritual power that took 3 to 5 days to recover. When encountering a little good medicine, there was no problem at all. The sharp contrast even more set off the embarrassment of those Jidan stage masters. This time, Taishimen suffered the most, directly losing 3 Jidan stage masters. Even if it was the largest sect, losing 3 Jidan stage masters in one day was also a huge loss that could not be borne. But now, no matter how big the loss was, there was no place to reason, and they even had to apologize to the outside world. Not to mention these, Cheng Wenkai had promised the benefits in order to persuade the 7 masters of other sects to help, but he had to fulfill them one by one, and even double the compensation. At the thought of this, Cheng Wenkai could no longer maintain a state of sobriety, his eyes turned over, and he fainted again. I, the disciple of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen, climbed the heaven ladder for the second time. Su Qingxin didn't care about these guys who had brought this upon themselves. He directly asked everyone present, "Is there anyone else who has doubts? Please step forward and speak." Chapter 94. Among the cultivators, which one was a fool? Did he want to offend the Chunyang Palace by standing up in this situation? Or did he want to ridicule the group of doubting sects led by Taishimen? Even if some people thought so in their hearts, no one would say so. Yang Chen climbed to the top twice under attack, which was not the real level of the heaven stairway. This thought flashed in someone's mind, and he immediately suppressed it. In this case, he could still climb to the top, and under normal circumstances, there should be no problem. After Su Qingxin asked 3 times in a row, and no one had any objections, he proudly announced that the disciple of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen, climbed to the top of the heaven stairway, and no one had any objections. Fellow Daoist Cheng, remember that when we said that the disciples of Chunyang Palace cheated, fellow Daoist Cheng's evaluation was that they should be killed. Su Qingxin looked at Cheng Wenkai, who was rescued and woke up, and once again stepped heavily on him. The disciples of Chunyang Palace cheated and should be killed. I don't know how the Jidan masters of Taishimen cheated and how to deal with it. I think, Maybe the Taishanmen should also go back and clean up the sect. After saying these words to vent his anger, Su Qingxin no longer paid attention to these people. In a flash, he appeared at the top of the heaven stairway and stood directly opposite Yangqin. On the floating mountain, the most dazzling person at the moment was Yangqin. He was a disciple at the second level of qi refining. It was already an unprecedented feat for him to climb to the top of the heaven stairway. In addition, he alone was equivalent to defeating 19 Jiedan masters. In terms of battle results, it was also unprecedented. At this moment, Yangqin had slowly opened his eyes. This time, he did not absorb too much spiritual power, especially the last dozens of levels of the heaven stairway. It was purely the flow of the heaven stairway itself, which was of no help to his cultivation. The heaven stairway had always been the most effective for the first time. But even so, the spiritual power of 10 Jiedan stage masters still made the spiritual power in Yangqin's body more powerful. At least this time, it could save Yangqin a few months of hard work. Not only did he gain some benefits, but he also taught a lesson to the guy who was trying to harm him. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Yangqin was really happy. Although Yangqin had obtained a complete victory, every step he took was filled with trepidation. This was especially true for the first time. As long as Yangqin showed the slightest bit of hesitation, all his previous efforts would be wasted, and his future would be bleak. The danger was no less than a life-and-death battle. In the second round, Yangqin was facing the possibility of winning or losing at any time. Even Gong Sunling, who was watching from the side, was worried for Yangqin. The most outstanding person was Yangqin, and the most outstanding sect was naturally Chunyang Palace. 2 disciples, one reached the top of the heaven stairway, and the other reached the 62nd level of the heaven stage. Any one of them was a genius disciple that other sects would fight for. This kind of genius, in the past, if there was one in 100 years, it would already be a blessing to the ancestors, but there were 2 in Chunyang Palace at once. The prosperity of luck made people salivate. A farce planned by the Taishanmen Cheng Wenkai finally came to an end in this way. At this point, this year's floating mountain gathering could be regarded as a successful end. Chunyang Palace returned with a full load, and those who participated in the gathering to watch the fun were not without gains. For the heaven stairway, no matter how many levels of the heaven stage they climbed, there were more or less benefits. As for those who were watching the show, they had also seen a splendid show, and all of them exclaimed in satisfaction. When the news came back to Chunyang Palace, it caused a sensation. For almost hundreds of years, Chunyang Palace had not had a genius disciple. This year, among the outer sect disciples, there were 2. How could the palace master of Chunyang Palace not be overjoyed? When he thought that Yangqin had also developed the qi-seeking pill, which could increase the number of outer sect disciples and shorten the time to become an outer sect disciple, the palace master was glad. When Yangqin entered the sect because of his identity as an executioner, he was also criticized by some people inside the sect. Now that he thought about it, it was really thrilling. If Yangqin had been rejected at that time, how could there be the glory of Chunyang Palace now, and how could there be the hope of revitalizing the sect in the future? Reward, a big reward. While the palace master was happy, he did not wait for Yangqin and the others to return to 9 Earth Mountain Villa, and had already promised rewards. When Gong Sunling and Yangqin reach the peak of qi refining, give them as many foundation establishment pills as they need, until they reach the foundation establishment stage. In addition, as long as they reach the foundation establishment stage, immediately refine 2 magic weapons, flying sword, according to their respective attributes, and let them choose the location of Meiqing Mountain to build a cave residence. After promising these benefits, the palace master suddenly realized that these were only future rewards, but not now. For a moment, he could not think of anything that could directly help the 2. After thinking for a while, he added, Gong Sunling, remember 2,000 sect contribution points, and Yangqin, remember 3,000. In the future, in 9 Earth Mountain Villa, the Sutra Depository will be open to them for free. If they have any questions, teach them carefully. The rewards were written down one by one, waiting for the 2 to return. Finally, The palace master seemed to remember something and immediately said, "In this year's sect competition between the outer sect disciples, I will personally attend and see how outstanding these two genius disciples are." In the end, Xianxian and Gong Sunling were only outer sect disciples, so they were not worthy of the palace master personally going out to reward them. However, this time, the rewards were already unprecedented, especially the foundation establishment pills. They would be given as many as they needed, which already guaranteed that they would definitely succeed in reaching the foundation establishment stage. Everyone in Chunyang Palace was in a jubilant mood, but only Chu Heng and Sun Haijing felt uncomfortable. Sun Haijing, in particular, had agreed to a life and death challenge with Yang Chen. He didn't dare believe anything else, but Yang Chen killing Han Jianda, who was in the 6th layer of qi refining, was an indisputable fact in front of everyone's eyes, and he was only in the 4th layer of qi refining right now. Basically, once the time was up, he would die. "Master, save me." The more Sun Haijing thought about it, the more scared he became. With a thud, he knelt in front of Chu Heng. Now the only chance was for Chu Heng to take action. There was no other way out. Sun Haijing didn't have the courage to betray Chunyang Palace, but he didn't have the confidence to face Yang Chen now. There is less than half a year. Even if you have a good practitioner weapon, you are no match for him. At this moment, Chu Heng and Sun Haijing were grasshoppers on the same rope. It would be very troublesome to kill him, so he could only stabilize Sun Haijing, unless Chu Heng's hesitation let Sun Haijing see a glimmer of hope for survival. He hurriedly kowtowed and begged, "Master, please save me. There is a very overbearing cultivation method that can speed up in a short time." After hesitating for a moment, Chu Heng slowly said, "It can let you rush to the peak of qi refining in a short time. However, this cultivation method is too overbearing, and it is very difficult to reach the foundation establishment stage. The chance is slim. Are you willing to practice it?" For Sun Haijing, between certain death in half a year and being able to reach the peak of qi refining in half a year, although the chance of reaching the foundation establishment stage was slim, he could live for 200 or 300 years. Between these two choices, Sun Haijing didn't even need to think about it to know which one to choose. In that case, go to the Sutras Depository, on the cultivation method shelf, and take a look at the jade slip in the middle of the 4th line of the last row. Chu Heng let out a long breath and pointed to Sun Haijing. Chapter 95. Because of Yang Chen's matter, the floating mountain assembly was delayed by almost 5 days. On the last day, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling came together to the floating market square. This assembly was held once a year, so the market square here was also held once a year. After the assembly, it would disperse. If they didn't see what good things there were today, then they could only wait until next year. When the two appeared on the street, the surrounding people all looked at them with an envious gaze. This year's 1st and 2nd place on the celestial stairway, their future prospects were limitless, so naturally there would be people coming to make good karma with them. Yang Chen accompanied Gong Sunling. Gong Sunling wanted to find some special array materials, and she also knew that Yang Chen had memorized the entire scripture depository pavilion, so she pulled him along to give advice. Along the way, there were all kinds of talisman papers, talismans, talisman tools, talisman treasures, all kinds of grades, and all of them were suitable for the use of each sect's qi refining disciples. The floating mountain assembly was originally for the qi refining disciples, so these things were also aimed at the qi refining disciples. Of course, there were all kinds of raw materials, but relatively speaking, they were also slightly lower grade. Occasionally there were a few things like the profound yang fruit that could be used to refine building foundation dan, but all of them were marked with extremely high prices, which made people feel intimidated. However, the more such a stall, the more people in the 9th layer of qi refining and even the peak of qi refining were bargaining. Regarding these, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling were all not interested, they were just some things that the two of them didn't need. After walking a few steps, they found a stall selling array materials. Yang Chen glanced over and saw 2 good grades. The stall owner didn't seem to care, the marked price was not high, so he quietly extended his finger to Gong Sunling. Somehow, Gong Sunling had a lot of trust in Yang Chen's vision. Perhaps it was because before they went to the celestial stairway, Yang Chen repeatedly told Gong Sunling a few words. Without batting an eyelid, he walked forward, pointed at some of the cheaper materials, and began to slowly haggle. Yang Chen secretly nodded in his heart. It was a test of his eyesight and negotiation skills when he encountered something good. He and Gong Sunling were both public figures now. Those stall owners might demand an exorbitant price. Gong Sunling's actions could also reduce some losses. While waiting, Yang Chen casually looked at the stalls around him. When he passed by one of the stalls, Yang Chen's gaze was suddenly attracted by something on the stall. It was a green fruit the size of a fist, and it looked like a pomegranate. Although it was green, it was already mature. Yang Chen knew that under the cyan skin, there were seeds. The entire fruit was bright and dazzling. With just a glance, one couldn't help but focus their attention on this fruit. Thunder pomegranate? Yang Chen's body was stunned. He really didn't expect to see such a good thing in this temporary market in the air. Thunder pomegranate was definitely a good thing. This kind of pomegranate could absorb thunder to grow, and it could only absorb thunder to grow. In ordinary places, it could not survive at all. The mature fruit could be refined into a thunder-absorbing ball. This kind of thunder-absorbing ball, when carried on the body, could actively absorb the thunder around the human body. Ordinary thunder pomegranate may only be able to absorb a little, but the thunder-absorbing ball refined from the older thunder pomegranate could even help the cultivator absorb the thunderclouds in the thunder tribulation. Although it couldn't completely absorb the thunder tribulation, it could absorb a large part, which could definitely make it easier for people to pass the thunder tribulation. If the Jiedon stage master wanted to enter the Yuanying stage, in addition to feeling the heaven and earth, they would begin to usher in the first of the three disasters, the thunder tribulation. With the help of the thunder pomegranate, it would definitely be much easier. Unfortunately, the mature thunder pomegranate could only be found by chance, and the older ones were even more scarce. Naturally, it was a good thing that countless cultivators wanted to snatch. Yang Chen's cry attracted the attention of Gong Sunling. She turned back and quickly found the thunder pomegranate. She took a closer look and couldn't help but frown. Junior brother, this thunder pomegranate has grown too old, and there is no medicinal effect. Gong Sunling was afraid that Yang Chen couldn't see the problem, and hurriedly reminded him, "Don't look at the big fruit, there are seeds inside. This is the only seed fruit that each pomegranate tree will bear every year. Don't be fooled." Gong Sunling's kindness, of course, Yang Chen nodded and accepted it. Of course, he could see that this was a seed fruit of the thunder pomegranate. Yang Chen didn't have any extravagant hopes for a mature thunder pomegranate. Instead, this seed fruit gave him a great opportunity. In his previous life, about 2,000 years later, the method of planting the thunder pomegranate would be discovered by a peerless genius. Since then, the thunder pomegranate was no longer a particularly rare item. Although that method was secretive, after ascending to the immortal world, Yang Chen still got this planting method by chance. This fruit was just right for him to try that method. "Thank you, senior sister, for reminding me," Yang Chen said, but he still went forward and asked the stall owner, "How many spirit stones does this thunder pomegranate seed cost?" Originally, when the stall owner saw that Yang Chen was attracted by the thunder pomegranate, he thought that he could make a lot of money, but Gong Sunling's reminder made him disappointed. However, he also blamed Gong Sunling. She was his senior sister and junior brother, so it was only right to remind her. Seeing Yang Chen come up to ask the price, the stall owner put away his speculative thoughts and said with a smile, "Since Dao friend Yang wants it, I won't ask for more. 100 genes of low-grade spirit stones, any?" Although the seeds of the thunder pomegranate were available every year, it was not easy to get. The stall owner got it by chance and had never sold it. When Yang Chen asked the price, he did not ask for an exorbitant price, but directly gave a real price. This Gong Sunling next to him sucked in a breath of cold air. In all fairness, this 100 genes of spirit stones was not expensive, but 100 genes of low-grade spirit stones, even if it was exchanged with the contribution points of the sect, It would still cost 1,000 points. Now Gong Sunling could not take out 100 genes of spirit stones. Just as she was about to come forward and bargain with the stall owner, Yang Chen next to her directly said, "Okay, deal." When he opened his mouth, the stall owner was overjoyed, but Gong Sunling was shocked and blurted out, "Where did you get 100 genes of spirit stones? After killing so many people, I can always get it together." Yang Chen casually said, and Gong Sunling immediately understood that it was from the killers killed by Yang Chen. But she was still very curious. "What do you want to buy this thunder pomegranate seed for?" "Senior sister, if I say that I want to use this seed to try to see if I can find a way to plant the thunder pomegranate, would senior sister believe it or not?" Yang Chen asked with a smile. "I believe it." What surprised Yang Chen was that Gong Sunling nodded without hesitation. Chapter 96. Haha. As soon as Gong Sunling's words fell, she heard a burst of crazy laughter around her, including the stall owner who had just closed the deal. They all made similar laughter. "This is the thunder pomegranate seed that Daoist Yang wants." After the stall owner finished laughing, he realized that something was wrong. The business was not finished yet. How could he laugh at the customer? He hurriedly stuffed the thunder pomegranate into Yang Chen's hand, and then waited for Yang Chen to pay the spirit stones. Yang Chen did not mean to go back on his word. He directly threw out a piece of spirit stone from his Jiankuan bag. After the two sides settled the transaction, the thunder pomegranate seed became Yang Chen's personal item. After climbing the heaven stairway, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling of Chunyang Palace had long been the target of public criticism. It was not known how many people were staring at their words and deeds. The dialogue between Yang Chen and Gong Sunling just now was heard by the people around them. They had seen people who overestimate themselves, but they had never seen a guy like Yang Chen who overestimated himself. It was not known how many Yuanying stage cultivators had studied the planting method of thunder pomegranate, and in the end, all of them failed one by one. Among them, there was no lack of masters in the peak Yuanying stage, only one step away from entering the Dashang stage. Even these people were helpless, let alone Yang Chen, a disciple in the second layer of the Qi refining stage. Even if Yang Chen immediately became a Zhedan stage master, everyone would definitely laugh at him if he dared to say this. What a big tone. Daoist Gong Sun, Daoist Yang's cultivation time is short, and he doesn't know a lot of things, but Daoist Gong Sun, you shouldn't. Immediately, someone began to pretend to be sincere. Daoist Yang's joke, Daoist Gong Sun actually believed it so simply, it really is a master's affection. This person's words immediately caused another round of laughter. If you can also climb the heaven stairway, if you say the same thing, I will believe it. Gong Sunling's face sank, and she said directly. All of a sudden, all the laughter was stuck in their throats. Some of them even started coughing because they were holding it in too quickly. Gong Sunling's words seemed to make these people suddenly lose a lot of fun to ridicule. Everyone seemed to start thinking again. Since Yang Chen could climb to the top of the heaven ladder that many predecessors couldn't do, then who could conclude that he couldn't find the cultivation method of the thunder pomegranate? However, the shock only lasted for a moment. Very soon, the wild laughter covered up everything. Was there a lack of geniuses in this world? But he had never seen anyone who could successfully grow the thunder pomegranate. Although Yang Chen's ascension to the top of the celestial stairway was enviable, it also attracted the hatred and jealousy of many people. Now that there was such an opportunity, it would be strange if people did not seize the opportunity to suppress Yang Chen. In a short while, Yang Chen's words had spread throughout the market and even reached the ears of several Zhedan stage masters. Immediately, someone commented, "Humph, you overestimate yourself. This little madman's tone is not small." The one who spoke was a Zhedan stage master of the Taishanmen who was seriously injured because of Yang Chen, but he was now in the middle stage of foundation establishment. He had just woken up to heal his injuries. When he heard the news, he couldn't help but speak. "That's good." Cheng Wenkai next to him didn't seem to have much sarcasm for Yang Chen's words. Instead, he said something nice, which made his two fellow apprentices very puzzled. "Don't look at me like this." Cheng Wenkai sneered, Since he likes to study and grow the thunder pomegranate, then spread the news. Just say that Chunyang Palace has boasted that his disciple, Xianxian, can successfully study the method of growing the thunder pomegranate within 200 years. We must let all the sects know and let Chunyang Palace be unable to defend themselves. What does senior brother mean? Another fellow apprentice next to him, whose Jedon stage had fallen to the foundation establishment stage, asked. He is a disciple of Chunyang Palace. Isn't he a genius among geniuses? Cheng Wenkai sneered again. I just want to know, such a peerless genius, studying something that countless Yuanying stage masters can't study for 200 years, how much of a genius will he be after 200 years? The two Jedon stage masters, who had fallen, heard Cheng Wenkai's words, and their eyes suddenly lit up. They immediately began to summon the disciples of Taishanmen and whispered in their ears. The disciples who came in were puzzled, but the more they listened, the more they nodded, and quickly ran out and began to do it. Before Yang Chen and Gong Sunling finished buying what Gong Sunling needed, the rumors had spread throughout the floating mountain, and even countless communication talismans had flown out of the floating mountain. When Su Qingxin received the news and wanted to refute the rumors, it was already too late. Su Qingxin could easily guess the truth of the facts. The two outer sect disciples bought things and wanted to try it. It was originally a joke, but it was used by people with intentions. They vowed that this was the arrangement of Chunyang Palace, so that after becoming famous on the Heaven Stairway, they could once again open the eyes of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling. In fact, Chunyang Palace had long known the cultivation method of thunder pomegranate, but it was a secret. It was reasonable, and people could not help but believe it. Reckless. At this point, Su Qingxin had no choice but to quickly inform the palace master to make a decision. On the contrary, Yang Chen was not affected at all. He leisurely accompanied Gong Sunling to buy what she needed, and then after walking around he spent all the spirit stones on him to buy a medicine garden space. This medicine garden space was similar to the medicine garden of Xiangyang Mountain, but the grade was much worse, and it could barely open up a planting space. But even so, it was a quasi-magic weapon level thing. However, the seller seemed to intend to help Yang Chen. Even if Yang Chen did not have enough spirit stones, he still accepted all the spirit stones and gave the medicine garden space to Yang Chen. With the fact that Yang Chen bought the medicine garden space, all of this had been completely determined. Even if Chunyang Palace wanted to refute, they had to come up with a reason. How could a disciple at the second level of Qi refining have hundreds of kilograms of low-grade spirit stones on him? If this was not the support of the sect, then what was it? Of course, Yang Chen buying this medicine garden space was definitely a cover-up. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to explain what he got from the medicine garden of Xiangyang Mountain in the future. Along the way to the marketplace, Yang Chen and Gong Sunling did not take it seriously. When they returned to Qianxiu Pavilion, they saw Su Qingxin with a worried face. Your performance on the Heaven Stairway is excellent, and now you are the target of public criticism. Be careful with your words and actions. Whatever you say may be used by people with ulterior motives. After Su Qingxin told Yang Chen and Gong Sunling about the matter, he could not help but shake his head. As for how to deal with it, wait until we return to Chunyang Palace, the palace master will decide. Both of them bowed and answered. Alas. Su Qingxin sighed again. Yang Chen, especially you must be careful in the future. When you go back this time, I will punish you to do closed-door training for 3 months. Concentrate on your cultivation, and come out during the sect competition. This time, I will report to the palace master. We, Chunyang Palace, will take responsibility for this matter. Chapter 97. The reason why Yang Chen was still willing to enter Chunyang Palace after his rebirth, in addition to the reason of his master, was that Chunyang Palace was willing to protect its disciples. In the previous life, when Yang Chen had an accident, the 4 Yuanying stage cultivators of Taishanmen directly went to the door. Except for the Bright Moon Palace, which had long surrendered to the Taishanmen and left Chunyang Palace, the entire Chunyang Palace was destroyed in order to protect their disciples who did not make mistakes. Now it was also because of Yang Chen. After Su Qingxin understood the rights and wrongs, he directly gave Yang Chen a sentence. This matter, Chunyang Palace will take responsibility. Even if Su Qingxin punished him to retreat because of this matter, it could also be regarded as a means of protection. This sentence made Yang Chen suddenly feel a burst of warmth in his heart. Moved, Yang Chen did not forget to ask Su Qingxin, "Grandmaster, where did the rumor come from?" "It's a few rogue cultivators who have left the floating mountain. I don't know where they went." Su Qingxin knew why Yang Chen asked this and shook his head. "No matter who wants to deal with you, they will not let anyone catch them. You climbed to the top of the heaven stairway and offended too many people. You abolished 19 Jidan stage masters, and there are too many people who are hostile to you. You don't have to think too much, go back and honestly retreat. This matter, the sect will solve it." "Yes, Grandmaster." Yang Chen also knew that it was impossible to have any ready-made evidence. Even Chu Heng, who was in the foundation establishment stage, wanted to deal with him, and he had no evidence, let alone offending so many Jidan stage masters and sections. For the time being, this matter was still just a rumor so far, and there was no need for Yang Chen to do any special treatment. Because of this matter, Su Qingxin specially took Yang Chen and Gong Sunling back to Chunyang Palace. After all, they were two genius disciples. If they encountered an accident on the way back from the floating mountain gathering, it would be a great tragedy and joke. Gong Sunling had just reached the 6th stage of qi refining and could fly with her own strength, but the speed was not fast, and Yang Chen did not have the ability to fly at all. It was too slow to rush back, and there were too many variables on the way. A Jidan Grandmaster was indeed a Jidan Grandmaster. Su Qingxin directly enveloped the two of them with a treasure light, and they flew 100 miles away in an instant. This flying magic weapon was Su Qingxin's proud work. Seeing the envious light in Gong Sunling's eyes, Su Qingxin smiled and encouraged, "Don't worry, with the talent of the two of you, after you reach the foundation stage, you will be able to refine a better magic weapon than mine." Gong Sunling nodded, but Yang Chen didn't say anything. Speaking of which, none of the magic weapons that he had that could not be used were worse than Su Qingxin's, so he didn't feel anything at all. Along the way, the journey that Yang Chen spent 6 months to reach was completed in less than a day by Su Qingxin with the two people. This time Su Qingxin did not return to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, but directly took the two to Chunyang Palace. Returning with them were message talismans from various places, as well as several inquiries from nearby sections. Their tone seemed to be blaming Chunyang Palace. In addition to Su Qingxin, there was also an acquaintance of Yang Chen, Zhu Chintao, the master of the medicinal hall, and the master of the Bright Moon Palace, Chu Heng's master, Liang Xiaoming, who was also a Jidan stage master. What surprised Yang Chen was that Chu Heng was also among them. Of course, there was also a disciple of the law enforcement hall, Du Qian, who was also an acquaintance of Yang Chen. Du Qian recommended Yang Chen to participate in the floating mountain gathering. Simply from the effect of the stairway to heaven, it did have a shocking effect. Speaking of which, Du Qian's recommendation was meritorious. However, since Du Qian was the recommendation and was also a disciple of the law enforcement hall, he naturally needed to come forward to deal with Yang Chen's matter this time. Chu Heng was there because he was a disciple who had taught martial arts for the past few years. He naturally needed to be informed when something happened to an outer sect disciple. Looking at Chu Heng's angry face, it was clear that he was in a very bad mood. "Yang Chen, do you know your crime?" The moment he saw Yang Chen, Chu Heng directly stood up and shouted at Yang Chen before the Jidan stage masters could speak. Looking at Chu Heng's appearance, it seemed that he could not wait to dispose of Yang Chen immediately. Yang Chen cast a sidelong glance at Chu Heng and did not say anything. He stepped forward and bowed to the Jidan stage masters with Gong Sunling. Even Chu Heng did not dare to say anything more when greeting the elders. He did not want these masters to think that answering his questions was more important than greeting the elders. Chu Heng was left to the side until Yang Chen and Gong Sunling finished greeting one by one. Then he turned to Chu Heng and greeted the martial uncle at the same time. With the elders present, Chu Heng could only accept the greeting according to the rules. Then he asked again, "Yang Chen, do you know your crime?" But this time, the momentum was not as before, and his voice was just louder. I don't know. Compared with Chu Heng, Xianxian was much more confident and shook his head directly. You still dare to quibble? Chu Heng was furious. In front of several Jidan stage masters, he did not dare to be too presumptuous. But this time, several people seemed to have a tacit understanding and did not speak. It seemed that they acquiesced to his behavior. Chu Heng also raised his voice and began to reprimand directly. I really don't know. Xianxian looked at Chu Heng with an innocent expression and said slowly, Please enlighten me, Martial Uncle Chu. Your nonsense on the floating mountain has spread to all the major sections. Chu Heng stared at Xianxian and said slowly and clearly, Now all the major sects have informed my Chunyang Palace, blaming us for concealing our fellow cultivators and greatly damaging the reputation of my Chunyang Palace. Do you dare to say that you don't know? What did my Chunyang Palace hide from other cultivators that it will damage our reputation? Xianxian laughed instead and looked at Chu Heng's eyes with a hint of ridicule. I don't think you dare to admit it. Let me ask you, did you mention the planting method of thunder pomegranate? Chu Heng sneered and asked. Looking at his appearance, it seemed that he wanted Xianxian to admit his guilt. Now all the cultivators are pressuring the palace master to hand over the planting method. If it weren't for your nonsense, how could this have happened? I only said that I would try to see if I could find out the planting method of thunder pomegranate. Senior Sister Gongsun can testify to this. The smile on Xianxian's face had never changed. The rest has nothing to do with me. Because of this, other cultivators certainly think that my Chunyang Palace will keep the planting method of thunder pomegranate a secret in order to support your reputation, so they will put pressure on my Chunyang Palace. Chu Heng snorted coldly and asked, You are just an outer disciple of the qi refining stage. How dare you be so arrogant? Chapter 98. Master Chu. Xianxian suddenly called Chu Heng very solemnly, Which rule in our sect does not allow the outer sect disciples to study the planting method of the thunder pomegranate? Or is there a recognized clause in the cultivation world that forbids the outer sect disciples from studying the planting method of the thunder pomegranate? This Xianxian's question made Chu Heng speechless. Of course, there was no such thing in the sect rules and there was no such saying in the cultivation world, but everyone was self-aware, and those with low cultivation base would definitely not touch it. Xianxian did this, but it couldn't be said that he was wrong. However, Chu Heng quickly adjusted and asked loudly, But it has been spread among the same people, saying that you will be able to study the planting method of the thunder pomegranate within 200 years. What should our sect do? Didn't they say it was 200 years? Xianxian suddenly smiled and looked at Chu Heng and said, If you want to find trouble, come back after 200 years. Now, our sect will not receive you. Hearing Xianxian's sloppy answer, Du Qian, who had been sitting in the back, laughed and laughed. Xianxian's answer was simply a rogue. Du Qian's laughter made Chu Heng angry. If they come back after 200 years and you haven't researched it, how can you explain it? If I haven't researched it, then I haven't researched it. I don't know how many masters of the Yuanying stage and Dashang stage have not researched it. I, a disciple of the qi refining stage, have not researched it. It's not shameful. Xianxian shook his head and laughed. Could it be that if you haven't researched it, you have committed a big crime and you have to be beheaded? But I remember that there is a predecessor of the Yuanying stage of the Taishanmen and a predecessor of the Dashang stage of the Green Jade Immortal Island are still alive, and they have also studied the planting method of the thunder pomegranate. If you want to be beheaded, you should behead those two predecessors first. My words carry little weight, so I will be the last. The several Jidan stage seniors who had been sitting in the back, although they did not open their mouths, Chu Heng and Xianxian's words were clearly heard by them. Xianxian's answers seemed to have made everyone think of a solution to the problem. It was just that it was a bit shameless, but Xianxian had already said that so many experts and mighty figures couldn't figure it out, so it was not shameful for a mere qi refining stage disciple like him to have no results. Whoever dares to say that Xianxian is shameful, that is definitely offending a large number of Yuanying and Dashang stage masters. But Chu Heng suddenly didn't know what to say. This was clearly a great opportunity to heavily punish Xianxin, but Xianxin made it sound as if nothing had happened. How could Chu Heng not be disappointed? However, before Chu Heng could finish his sentence, Xianxin had already started to interrogate him. Besides, Martial Uncle Chu, do you want an explanation from Chunyang Palace? Explain to whom? Did we promise them anything? In the latter sentence, Xianxin's tone had become cold. Martial Uncle Chu, you don't side with Chunyang Palace, but with other cultivators everywhere. What is the reason? As if he wanted to say it in one breath, Xianxin did not wait for the crowd to interrupt, and then said, what does Chunyang Palace owe others? Or is it that Chunyang Palace is born to be half a head lower than other cultivators? Why do we have to explain? To put it bluntly, even if I have figured it out, the disciples of Chunyang Palace have neither killed their parents nor destroyed their sections. Why do we have to explain what we have researched? Martial Uncle Chu, you have to give us a reason. Yang Chen's words had made the faces of several Jindan stage Grand Masters serious. Especially the last few sentences, it was precisely what was on everyone's mind. Our Chunyang Palace does not owe anyone anything, and we are not lower than other sections. Why do we have to explain what we have researched to others? Chu Heng was speechless by Yang Chen's series of questions, and he didn't even know how to answer for a while. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and immediately thought of a high-sounding reason. After hesitating for a moment, he quickly said, the planting method of thunder pomegranate is related to the thunder tribulation of Jindan stage. This is a matter for the benefit of all cultivators. At that time, other cultivators will use this reason to suppress us. What should our Chunyang Palace do? So, if it is really researched, our Chunyang Palace will have to make it public? Yang Chen also had a smile on his face, but people with discerning eyes could see the anger in his smile at a glance. I remember that Taishanmen have a formula of nascent soul pill, which is an exclusive collection and exclusive refining method. It can help Jindan stage Grand Masters form their nascent soul. This is also a matter for the benefit of all cultivators. Why don't you ask Martial Uncle Chu for advice from Taishanmen? Instead, you want to betray the interests of our sect. Martial Uncle Chu, what benefits have you received from others that you want to betray your sect and deceive your ancestors? You are slandering me. Chu Heng had been questioned by Yang Chen and couldn't answer at all. He could only point to Yang Chen and say a few words before he could say a complete sentence. Deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors was a heinous crime. No matter how arrogant Chu Heng was, he did not dare to admit this crime. But Yang Chen didn't seem to want to let Chu Heng go. He took a step forward, facing Chu Heng's finger, and continued to ask, Martial Uncle Chu, all the cultivation methods of our Chunyang Palace are things that can benefit all cultivators. Shouldn't they be made public? I don't know which cultivator you are talking about. Martial Uncle Chu, you might as well tell us. We will ask him in front of the world if he thinks that our Chunyang Palace should do things like this. Yang Chen took a step forward, but Chu Heng seemed to be forced by Yang Chen and took a step back. Yang Chen took another step forward, and Chu Heng took another step back, as if he didn't dare to face Yang Chen at all. As for Yang Chen's question, Chu Heng couldn't answer it. There seemed to be no other way but to retreat. However, after taking 2 steps back, Chu Heng's back was lightly pushed by someone. Du Qian's voice came from behind. Senior brother Chu, just answer the question. Why do you have to keep retreating? His voice was filled with undisguised joy at Chu Heng's misfortune. Chu Heng's body stiffened and he was forced to stand where he was. Yang Chen no longer pressed him. He just stood where he was and said with a faint smile, Fortunately, this is only in our Chunyang Palace. If it is spread out, Martial Uncle Chu will be deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. This will be a disgrace to our Chunyang Palace and damage our reputation. If it weren't in front of several Jindan stage masters, Chu Heng would have the thought of killing Yang Chen directly. But now, he could only stand there awkwardly, unable to say anything. Until this moment, Bright Moon Temple Master Liang Xiaoming, who had been sitting in the back without speaking, coughed and said, It's just a rumor. Why make a fuss? Chu Heng, you still need to sharpen your mind. After this year's competition, Go out and practice. Xianxian, you will follow Hall Master Su's punishment and practice in seclusion. As soon as he spoke, this matter was settled, and no one had any objection. After saying the punishment, Liang Xiaoming opened his mouth and said another thing. Gong Sunling Yangchen, this gathering on the floating mountain has brought glory to our sect, and the palace master has given rewards. You should guard against arrogance and rashness, practice hard, and don't let down the expectations of our Chunyang Palace. Chapter 99. Strictly speaking, Liang Xiaoming's punishment was fair. He did not add any crime to Yang Chen, nor did he increase any punishment. The request for closed-door training was proposed by Su Qingxin, so it was not Liang Xiaoming's fault. Although Chu Heng's punishment was a little biased, there was indeed a problem with Chu Heng's temperament. Everyone could see this. The best way to change the temperament was to go out and gain experience. There was nothing to investigate. The reward that should be given had been given, and the punishment that should be given had been given. There was no need to discuss this matter again. Yang Chen had said very clearly that the matter of Chunyang Palace did not hinder anyone or hurt anyone, so there was no need to explain to anyone. Although Chunyang Palace was only a second-rate sect, it was not a sect that could be trampled on. Before Yang Chen went into closed-door training, he was stopped and questioned by Zhu Chintao. Do you want to try growing thunder pomegranate? Are you sure? Zhu Chintao didn't have the confidence of Gong Sunling in Yang Chen. Instead, he was a little worried. Why don't you cultivate in peace first? It's not too late to consider this kind of thing after you reach the foundation establishment and core formation stage. Thank you, Grandmaster, for your concern. After Yang Chen thanked him, he still said with a smile, I'm not sure. I just saw it and wanted to give it a try. Who would have thought that someone would be so bored to make things so big? Don't pay attention to what others say. Just focus on closed-door training. Zhu Chintao thought about it and said no more. I also want to see your performance on the day of the major competition. Don't let me down. Grandmaster, don't worry. After a simple exchange between Yang Chen and Zhu Chintao, he was directly taken away by Du Qian to the Forbidden Room in Chunyang Palace where the disciples were punished for closed-door training. The Forbidden Room was a small suite inside and outside. There was a small opening on the outside door, through which water and food could be brought in from the outside. The door inside was controlled by the disciples in closed-door training. If necessary, it could not be opened. They could also come out to enjoy some food and water at any time. After all, although the fasting pill was good, it couldn't satisfy the glutton's cravings. Cultivators did not have to completely cut off their emotions. Otherwise, the Jade Emperor of the Heavenly Court would not have lived a life of feasting and revelry every night, and countless immortals would never get tired of it. Since he was in seclusion, it was obviously convenient for him to cultivate. There was also a small spiritual vein exit in the Forbidden Room, which was connected to the spiritual vein of the entire Meiqing Mountain. There was a small straw cushion at the entrance of the spirit vein for secluded disciples to use. After Yang Chen entered the Forbidden Room, he immediately switched to the black jade praying mat. Going into seclusion at this time was exactly what Yang Chen wanted. Originally, he was worried that he would be discovered planting the thunder pomegranate in the medicine garden, but he didn't have to worry about this problem in the Forbidden Room, which gave Yang Chen enough time. After settling everything, Yang Chen first examined himself. The spiritual power in the body was already more than the third layer of the qi refining stage, and he believed that he would soon enter the realm of the fourth layer of the qi refining stage. Because of the 2 consecutive heavenly stairs, Yang Chen was directly promoted by a small realm, and it also saved Yang Chen at least a year's time. The growth of the spiritual awareness made Yang Chen happy. If he cultivated step by step, even if the 3 purities secret art was magical, it would take at least 10 years of hard work to promote from the middle stage of the foundation stage to the peak of the foundation stage. The will of the beheading immortal stage was only integrated by 30%, and it had already allowed Yang Chen's spiritual awareness to directly enter the peak of the foundation stage. Although the realm of the spiritual power was still a lot worse, the 10 attributes of the yin and yang 5-element secret art were not worse than the people of the 6th layer of the qi refining stage. The crazy improvement of the spiritual awareness also made up for the shortcomings of the lack of spiritual power. Now Yang Chen had the ability to use the magic weapon. This was not the kind of use of the magic weapon in his hand, but he could use the imperial sword technique to control the flying sword in the air. Compared with the previous fighting method, it had already been a qualitative improvement. The imperial sword attack and the flying sword attack, the attack power was simply the difference between the sky and the earth. Unfortunately, the lack of spiritual power was always a big problem. The imperial sword attack, Yang Chen also had the power of 2 attacks. After 2 attacks, the spiritual power would be almost consumed. For Yang Chen, it was a little regrettable and insufficient, but presumably the other disciples of the peak of the qi refining stage could still only use the talisman. Yang Chen was already an existence that made people gnash their teeth and envy. What made Yang Chen most surprised and happy was that he could really control the magic weapon, which meant that Yang Chen could start sacrificial refining the magic weapon. Before, whether it was the profound spirit furnace or the sword sheath, Yang Chen just barely put in the spiritual awareness mark. Strictly speaking, as long as there was a master of the foundation stage who had a higher cultivation than Yang Chen, he could directly erase Yang Chen's spiritual awareness. The sacrificial refining was different. If he wanted to take the sacrificial refining magic weapon from the hands of others, at least the effort spent would not be less than the original owner. Unless the other party was dead and the spiritual awareness completely disappeared, it could be easily obtained. However, some high-grade magic weapons still needed special techniques and methods, such as the Xiangyang Mountain Medicine Garden and the sword sheath on Yang Chen's body. Every sect and every cultivator had their own unique cultivation method. Similarly, they would also have their own unique restrictions for refining magic treasures. If it was in his previous life, Yang Chen would definitely use the Great Sun-Scorching Sun cultivation method that he was good at in his previous life with the restriction techniques of the Chunyang Palace to sacrificial refining. But in this life, Yang Chen had a better choice. The Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art was the only God-level sacrificial refining secret art passed down from the 36 celestial spirits. Yang Chen couldn't wait to try the effect of this secret art. As the name suggests, since it was named Celestial Spirit, this Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art had only 36 layers in total. But each layer had 3 small levels in the upper, middle, and lower levels. Together, it was the number of celestial spirit and earthly spirit. And what made Yang Chen even more happy was that the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art did not limit what kind of spiritual power could be used, nor did it limit how many kinds of spiritual power could be used. In this case, every time he used the spiritual power of the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art and the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art to sacrificial refining, the effect would be doubled. When he thought about it, Yang Chen directly took out the Profound Spirit Furnace. The Profound Spirit Furnace was still only the lowest level of magic weapon. Relatively speaking, it was easier to sacrificial refine, and it was easier for Yang Chen to get familiar with the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art. Even if it was the first layer of the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, with the strength of Yang Chen, it still took at least 10 days to sacrificial refine the Profound Spirit Furnace to the first layer. The Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art was indeed the sacrificial refining secret art of the heavenly court's righteous gods. It was only the first layer of low grade, but it had already reached the level of sacrificial refining after Yang Chen's foundation stage in his previous life. What made Yang Chen even more happy was that after this sacrificial refining, in addition to the upgrade of the Profound Spirit Furnace, his Yin-Yang 5-element secret art seemed to be more condensed. It seemed that this Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining secret art was not only the magic weapon, but also Yang Chen himself. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.